Okay, this meeting of the Ontario School Board of Education is called to order. We have a tobacco policy in place. There is no smoking within 100 feet of any building. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? District Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Trustee Sherry?
I'm here.
Trustee Bishop?
Present.
Trustee Story?
Here.
Trustee Wallace?
Here.
Trustee Ramondo?
Here.
Trustee Hemingway Lynch?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to modify the appointment of the board trustee to reflect the proper term of service. Be it resolved that the June 21st, 2022 resolution appointing David Wallace is hereby modified so as to reflect the proper term of service, June 21, 22 to May 16th, 2023. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Story. Comments, questions? All in favor? That's true. Okay, thank you, David. Okay, so that's unanimous. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Ontario Central School District appoints Christy Taylor as a trustee to fill a vacancy. May I have a first, please? Trustee Wallace, second. Trustee Bishop. Comments, questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations, Christy. And the district clerk will administer the oath of office to the board trustee, whose term starts August 16th, 2022 and will end on 5/16/2023.
A photo? No? Okay.
It was a nice offer.
My oath photo.
Will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of trustee to the best of your abilities?
I do.
Thank you.
The board is going to enter into executive session. Motion to enter into executive session to meet with our attorney to discuss matters protected by attorney-client privilege. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Wallace, comments, questions? All in favor? We should be back in about 45 minutes. Okay, this is a motion to exit executive session, return to public session. May I have a first, please? Trustee Wallace, second. Trustee Bishop. Questions or comments? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, the Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of August 2nd, 2022 and August 11th, 2022. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Wallace. Comments or questions? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And Ms. O'Connor will present the 2022-2023 Middle School Comprehensive Educational Plan. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us in here. My team of 4 is one tonight, so thank you, Megan. We just have a busy summer going on, but they all wanted me to relay their gratefulness for, letting us do this year, and we think we had a really good year. So thank you for your support in all of this. Because there's so many new faces here, I thought I would start and back up a little bit and explain how we got here and where we went last year. So there's a little PowerPoint there I'm going to refer to as I speak. But New York State designated Ontario Middle School as a TSI school, Targeted Support and Improvement, based on our 2018-19 state assessment scores. And so we had to make a plan to improve these scores for our students with disabilities. It was a difficult task. We had about a month to do it right before COVID. And we were basing it on 18-19 test scores. So the plan had to be created by a team. It was, the state does not allow just a principal to make a plan or just a superintendent to make a plan. You has to have a whole team. So the middle school building leadership committee is made up of Megan Frandino, who's here tonight, Valerie Stewart, Mike Coker, and Corey Cavallero. And I just want to say out loud that they went so far above and beyond in the last year and a half, creating this and believing in it, and putting in untold hours to make it work. So I wanted to say thank you to them. So a little bit more about the plan. The state asks us to include multiple stakeholders. So it was all our teachers, myself, parents, and students. We've had several parents off and on based on schedules, but I just wanted to also say out loud that Wendy Wolfenson and Hal Denton have helped us tremendously. I even called them the other day, and one was packing her car as she was going away, and Hal was unpacking from coming back, and they were like, we'll help you, as we're doing this. So I just want to say out loud that they are amazing parents in our district. So I want to thank them. And our students helped us too, because we surveyed the heck out of them all year long. So thank you for that. So we had to look at all the different data, and Stephanie was amazing in being able to navigate the crazy forms that the state gave us and fill it out in a coherent way. So thank you, Stephanie. Taking all of this into consideration, we identified goals, we tried to figure out the root causes, and come up with an action plan, benchmarks, and implementation. And I want to say right off the bat that COVID kind of stopped us in our tracks a little bit last year, and we do not have, in my mind, the benchmarks and implementation that we should and that we plan to have for next year. So we are designated for our state assessments, and I don't know what grade, I have to think some math, these kids are in now for 18-19, 11th grade. So we decided to move our focus to quarterly common assessments, even though we have to get off this list. In the middle school, we traditionally have a lot of refusals. In 2019 and 20, the state tests were canceled, and the state said, you're all on the list again. And then in 2020 and 21, they made it optional. And my kids are so smart. They were like, if I don't have to take this test, I'm not taking it. So we don't have any test data for that either. This past year, we gave the test, Most 8th graders did not take it. Most 8th graders refused it. Most 7th graders did take it. So we'll have some data. The test scores were released yesterday, but they're embargoed, and the state website was a little wonky today, so I'm just starting to get into it, so I don't have the test data yet. So that'll be another presentation. So we moved our focus to our quarterly common assessments because everyone takes them, and we think that they are a truer measure of what students know in the middle school than the state assessments. But if you recall, we thought we were going to start school and everything was going to be normal last September, and it wasn't. So we didn't have any quarterly state assessments. We only had a final exam finally at the end of the year, which was really the first test a lot of the kids took. The reason that we went to our common assessments is when we looked at our special class population scores, they consistently lagged behind all our other groups. And we expect those scores to be somewhat lower, but we were worried that these students were getting the same skills and content that everyone else was. So we came up with, we thought, what if we put all the kids together? Which is much more inclusive and much more what our middle school works towards. So we wanted to move our special class students into co-taught classes and give them all the supports they needed. Last year we had resource room, reading, and study lab. We are going to change that for next year and offer tutorials taught by content teachers. We'll no longer have study halls in the middle school. We'll have teacher-taught tutorials so that all the kids will get the extra help that they need. So if you need math help, you can have help with a math teacher. If you need English help, you'll have English help with an English teacher. So we created the co-teach model. So last year we had 2 co-teach classes at each grade level, and then the other sections were regular. We have a larger special ed population coming in this year. So in the 7th grade, the teachers will have 3 co-taught classes and 1 regular. So that's a difference. So the benefits that we thought a year ago of having a co-teach model in lieu of a special class is, or the reason for trying it is that middle school's not high stakes. Middle schools is about trying and providing a safe place to make a mistake and fix it. And we already do this in all of our specials. It seems kind of silly, but in the 4 core, in the past, they were students were not mainstreamed, but then they were all together in art, PE, technology, home and careers, French, Spanish, band course, all of that. So it does work. So that was part of our thinking. So we started the year with co-teaching, and part of our state plan asks us to put into place some kind of intervention, and we chose professional learning communities, PLCs. So we had an 8th grade PLC and a 9th grade PLC. So Megan is going to talk to you a little bit about the benefits in the classroom of the co-teach model, and she was a member of the 7th grade professional learning community. We used some outside professional development for professional learning communities. We used a group out of New York City called G&R Inclusive, and I can never remember G&R. We, in the middle school, refer to them as Guns N' Roses are coming today. I don't remember what G&R stands for, but they are a company in New York City that help teachers co-teach. So a couple of the women would come in sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually. They worked in our schedule, and they worked with pairs of teachers over the whole entire year and watched them teach, and then sat down and said, here's what you should do, here's things you can do better. Created Google folders for everyone to share. They were a great resource, and we're going to use them again next year, this coming year.
just want to say, as a part of the team and as a part of the middle school for this many years, you can hear me. It's my teacher voice. I know. Okay. Oh my God, I'm on TV? No, I'm joking. Sorry, it's still summer. One of the things that I want to say that is I was so excited that instead of just going through the state's motions, we really took it on as a middle school to say, what can we change and how can we make this better? And maybe it'll work and maybe it won't, but we don't know if we don't try. And then COVID, and even through that, it's been an amazing experience sitting on both sides. And I used to be like an intensive teacher. And I think that I am really good at that. However, there is so much to be learned in a consultant teacher classroom or a regular education classroom. You know, I can sometimes in those 115-1s get caught in a loop where I want to make sure that they know their algebra. And then I miss some other things. And then sometimes they miss out on that. But being all of us together was just able to magnify the parts that the regular ed teacher in the room was able to come in, and I was able to modify. And then also the kids that are in the room, I mean, if we're really honest with each other, we all have IEPs. Like, all of us should have an IEP. You know, even your top 10% are anxiety ridden and they're worried about quizzes and tests and they are freaking out. So I think that using, you know, models and methods, you know, call it special ed if you want, but it's just what these kids need to cope and to get through and to have two people in the classroom. And this example isn't one about our academics per se, but at the beginning of the year, and I am a special ed teacher, and so I know that sometimes there's a stigma attached to, oh, you see Mrs. Frandino or you see this teacher. One of the girls on the hockey team was, you know, they have their field hockey stuff. So we're just like, leave it in our room, leave it in our room. So one of the girls, I said, just leave your field hockey stuff in my room. And she's like, okay. And she ended up leaving it in Linda Cavallero's room because I teach with Linda second period, and she had no idea who either one of us were, like, other than her teacher, which I think right there is the milestone of there's no stigma attached to anyone. And I'm really hoping that this year our co-teaching benefits will be able to explore more. You know, there are six ways, or there are bunches of ways to have a consultant teacher model. And we're really excited that we're going to expand and be able to work on more than one or two of those ways and really have time to develop trust and commitment to our kids. So I'm super jazzed to come back and do this. And I love where we teach, and I love that we can make mistakes. And I also love, for those that question, you know, there are high stakes tests right now in the high school, Regents exams per se. So, you know, if there is a 7th or 8th grader who is struggling in that CT model or is making it through or whatever, there are places when high stakes tests become, you know, more of a thing that they can always, I don't want to say go back to, but there are modifications and ways. It doesn't mean that they are stuck in the space. But what they are learning social emotionally, and what they are learning, being able to see other people's grit and stamina and make connections to their peers that maybe they wouldn't have been with, it's just really tremendous. And I know that sounds so corny, which you really know that I'm ready to come back to school because I cannot wait to see them this year. So thank you. I don't know if I said what I was supposed to, but tangent. I took notes. I didn't even stay with that.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I understand the context or sentiment for what you mean about the middle school is not high stakes. It's about trying things out. It's a safe place to make mistakes. But can you say more about that? And who are you thinking about? Like, who thinks that the middle school is not high stakes?
I don't think it's high stakes, the middle school.
Okay.
I want to teach kids to be students in the middle school. I want to teach them to be, you know, happy, solid citizens. I think that's more important at that age. They're learning who they are. They're trying to figure out who their friends are. They don't need, in the high school, it's a little different. In order to walk across that stage, there are certain things you have to do, and that is definitely, that's what we would consider high stakes.
So just so I'm clear, it's more about their record. Is that what you're thinking about?
In high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
in this context, what you're talking
Yeah.
about high stakes, meaning it's their academic record.
Right.
Got it.
There's less room. I think sometimes there's less room in high school for mistakes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can I ask something? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. With it not being high stakes, is there a way to transition them to the high school model where it's not just night and day going from one to the other?
So we think that this does transition them better because students are all together. They're all learning the same content. They have, they're learning to be with each other in a much better way than in the past. They were separated. So they're all together now. Right. So you want students to be in the least restrictive classroom they can possibly be in. And this does that for them.
Valerie?
Can you tell me more like the sleep lab, or not sleep lab, the study lab, how you said that, if a student is having issues with a certain class, there's no longer study halls, they're going to get.
So in the middle school, there aren't very many study halls anyway because there's no room in their schedule. So the few that there were, we've turned into, we just had to come up with another name, so they're called tutorials now. Almost every content teacher has one coming up this year, so that's really nice because now, if you need math help, maybe you can be with Mrs. Cavallero, or if you need English, so those people are, I think, a little bit more available.
Now, is this something that the student will be in all year long, or is this going to be, say, sometime, student needs extra help in English? And then they're okay in English, but then they need extra help in math at another time. So how is that going to work?
So you can think of it, if you want, as a study hall, except that it's not just supervision. The teacher's there to help them do work, but there's other ones going on at the same time or at other times, so that it really is only 7th and 8th grade. So most people can help them with every subject. Yeah, and there's other times too.
Sorry,
Okay.
this is not on the
No.
IEP,
No.
not a continuation. So, okay. So this is open to regular ed students also.
Almost all middle school students need a little place to get organized and
It's the middle school
Yeah.
when they leave the Bennett and they come down to us, and it's like they're trying to navigate the lockers
Yeah.
and the changing of classes. So it's also, middle school is a big time for us here, the 7th and 8th graders when they're learning all of that stuff.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Not a question, just thank you, Jen, to you and your team, really for a great, just a great job and really being so innovative. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
As a parent of a 19-year-old with an IEP, I'm very, very excited about this, and I support it, and I'm sure other people do too. But and I can understand why you don't have data for 3 years, and that's really hard. But sometimes data also is collected with just day to day and what you're watching and witnessing. So I'm very proud of what you're doing.
Thank you.
So thank you.
One anecdotal piece of data I have is one of my regular ed teachers at the end of the year, we were going through the final exams, and the other teachers were commenting that some of the special ed grades were pretty good. And he said, I had no idea that this student would have been in a special class. I don't know how that would, and I mean, that's not data I can put in a PowerPoint, but those are the kinds of things that we saw.
Yeah, and we speak of inclusivity and least restrictive, and it's really important. And coping skills and just being with your peers, all of them, is just, it's what the real world is. So you're just, as you said, it's not high stakes because you're teaching them how to be really awesome human beings and respective of their peers, all of them. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, first of all, let me just say that from firsthand experience, the positivity in the halls of the middle school is palpable. And it's a very positive place, and that's a credit to you and your team.
Thank you.
So that's first off. I do have a question regarding the cell phone policy, just in how you're going to be dealing with withdrawal from the addicts, the little 7th and 8th grade addicts who have been had more flexibility in that policy. How are you planning to deal with that, and do you see it as a potential impediment?
It's so funny that you say that, because one of the first things I say to some of the kids is, "Are you addicted?" And they say, "Yes, I am." We're going to work on it, And the funny thing is that they know that they have it. They know it's a problem, which people say is the first step when you're addicted to something. But they know it's a problem, and they are often looking for some help. I don't know how many kids I have that come to me in the morning and say, "Can you just hold it for me?" And I'll get it at the end of the day, and I do. I just leave them on my desk. They know, so we'll just work through it.
I don't know if this is so much for you, Jen, or for Superintendent McLaren. Is there a thought process of bringing this down to the elementary buildings and doing that with them? I don't know if I don't know if it could be done for the high school because of the regencies and stuff like that. But if it is, the middle school special ed, all the staff has always been, that team. You guys have always been phenomenal, and you couldn't have picked a better place to start this. And now I'd love to see this go wherever we can use this model.
So I have not been a part of a conversation about expanding it, and I see Assistant Superintendent laughing, shaking her head, so I will invite her to add anything, but I also did just want to say thank you to Jen and Mrs. Frandino and the team members who are unable to be here, and I can echo everything everyone else has said. Our middle school is just really the best middle school, I think, in the county. But I love that feeling that all of the kids are going to have high expectations of themselves and just be allowed to grow in that. And you guys have worked some real magic.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to echo, great job. Thank you, team, Yay Middle School team. They've been very brave and taken risks and tried new things and been open-minded, and that's really been key. So thank you for that. To answer the question, yes, that's definitely a model that we want to expand and pursue, and we've been making some personnel moves to make sure we've got some flexibility at Bennett for students to be partially trying this model in their schedule, and obviously working very closely with PPS staff and seeing how we can do this in a way that is best for students. And we partner with staff to work through that, but yes.
I think that's excellent, and I'm really glad to hear it. I fully support a co-teach model. I think it's phenomenal. And Ms. O'Connor, I just want to say how much you're going to be missed next year, your leadership, and also the way that you guide our students and the way that you've made the middle school a safe place to be, I think is tremendous. And I am personally going to miss you very much, but I know that your teachers and the staff and the children are really going to miss you. So thank you to you, Mrs. Frandino, to Mr. Calvalero, and to Mr. Coker. I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. And I'm really proud of the work that you've done, and proud to support you in continuing to do that work. And even better if we can move it down to the elementary measure. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's good. That's very good, Miss Frandino, because I can't imagine this place without you. And I know that my children would say the same. Thank you all. Does anyone else have questions for Ms. O'Connor or Ms. Frandino before we move on?
So I think next we have discussion, and so I will introduce Dr. Jonas Schenker. He's the Deputy Superintendent for Ulster Boces, and he will then introduce Holly Brooker.
Oh, and our county really, really led the charge for most of the state, and that's because of the willingness of your administrators and teams to come to the table, think about Onteora, but also the collective county, because our teachers in New Paltz and Onteora and Kingston have districts that transcend all the different districts. So on behalf of Dr. Corey and the board, thank you so much. So I'm going to do the 90 seconds Boces 101 because we do have some new board members, and of course it goes without saying an open invitation for board members from any of the districts to come visit our programs, our CTE Center, our P-TECH, our special ed programs for K-12, the work that we do in instructional services and the Regional Information Center. Reach out to Victoria. She will work with Dr. Corey. We'll set up tours. Our programs are not Boces programs, they're your programs. Our schools are your schools. The things that we do are the extensions to your programs. And really at the core, that's what Boces is. There are things, so many things that Onteora, and again, we can go through and list all of the districts, do tremendously well. And then there are other things that aren't cost effective for you as a district to do. You may have a student with a particular IEP that would require a certain classroom, one child, 3 adults. It's not fiscally smart or appropriate to create one classroom for that child, and so we look to the county to create a setting for that child to be with like peers to receive the programming that the state and IEP calls for, and that might make sense at a Boces. And when you look at least restrictive, obviously we want to keep students in district. But when that can't happen, we want to keep them in county. We want to get them with their peers around the county. So that's really at the heart what we do. We work at the superintendent's level. We work at the assistant superintendent's level. We work at the PPS level. And we say, what do you need? What are the extensions to your programs that we need as a county? And we begin to co-build those programs with those leaderships. We have monthly meetings that Victoria's at the table with the superintendents, Stephanie's at the table with the assistant superintendents, and Cindy's at the table for PPS. And we're thinking about what is that, though you're not at the table currently. I know, not anymore. But what are those programs that we need to be building? We go ahead and create those programs in partnership with the districts, and then we begin implementation. And a little bit kind of the 101 around why and funding. So that's kind of the how we assess what we need to do, and that's student programs. That also goes to instructional needs. So if the county is talking about the need for a new literacy approach, K2, or science standards that are being rolled out from the State Department, or a particular approach around SEL or DEI, we become the clearinghouse to bring in speakers through our instructional service program and deliver those services in district. We also have a small army of folks who are the folks who deliver PD. In fact, my first, about 14 years ago, I worked in instructional services, and my first placement was in Ontiora as an instructional coach doing some co-teaching work. So this was my first assignment here. And in terms of the nuances of how Boces work, you have somebody sitting on your administrative team who really deeply understands Boces. So you have an awesome resource in Stephanie in terms of those kind of nuts and bolts questions. But there's a financial incentive by the state to do business with Boces as well. And the way that works is there's a complicated aid ratio, a formula that's calculated. And again, due to the complexities of the scale and size of Ontiora and the other factors for that, your aid ratio is a bit lower than the rest of the county. It sits at about 36%. And so if next year, between the 30 students you sent to Career and Tech and 10 students to Special Ed and PD you purchased, we'll use a round number, you were going to purchase $1 million worth of services for Boces, from Boces. The following year, in the form of state aid, you would receive back up to $360,000 of those dollars back in state aid. So that's the financial incentive to do it. And again, those are really, really just kind of round numbers. There are other complexities, and Victoria knows those as well as your business office. Not every dollar with Boces is aidable. There's certain portions of salaries which are allowed. But again, for the kind of overarching 101, that's really the incentive. And the reason why the state incentivizes that is to incentivize collaboration and shared services, so that in small to medium-sized districts, there are programs or extensions that can be accessible, which are financially feasible for a district, where without that, it might be impossible to offer those services. So again, our programs are your programs. Please, if you have an opportunity, come see your children in our shared programs. It really is a beautiful partnership as we work together to ensure that every student in Ontiora has a pathway, whether it's through the traditional K-12 here in Ontiora, or a portion of the day they're doing fashion or aviation or a special ed program. It really is a beautiful kind of comprehensive net, and we'll continue to explore additional needs as they emerge. One of those amazing services that we offer is community relations, and that's the work of Holly Brooker and her team. Have award-winning community relations department, all of our 8 districts and beyond. We have cross contracts. We have folks that are coming to us from Orange, Ulster, and beyond to get services through Holly and her team. I know you have some services with them, but Holly's going to speak to you a little bit about some of those other marketing, branding, website to really leverage and make sure that communication is at the forefront of Ontiora and how we can support that venture. So if there are any other programs or information about Boces that you want us to come to another board meeting, you want to hear more about Career and Tech, you want to hear more about P-Tech, please have Victoria reach out to Dr. Corey and myself. We will come up here. We'll bring your students to talk about so you can hear their perspective about those programs. And again, thank you so much for partnering with us and all we do. I'll let Holly speak to the communications, and then if there are any other questions that are about Boces, I'm happy to come back up. But I've already talked way too long, so thanks again.
Hello, everyone. So I put some notes together so that you guys didn't have to take them. So here's just a little outline of what I'll talk about.
Here, Holly, let me pass it out.
Yeah, they're already packaged, so just as Jonah said, I'm Holly Brooker. I'm the Community Relations Supervisor at Ulster Boces, and we have a communication COSER that provides a whole gamut of different communication services. I have a team of about a dozen people, and we specialize in community relations, video production, social media, crisis communication, graphic design, journalism, writing, photography, kind of like, we're almost like a little mini PR firm, but for schools. That's what we do. We live and breathe, I live and breathe, school PR all the time. So I was really excited when Victoria asked me to come and speak to you guys, because it's always makes me really happy when a board takes such an interest in communications that they elevate it up to this level, because it's such an important piece of your district's overall success. Not just the way you guys look, but ultimately it boils down to student achievement, right? When you have a community that understands your needs and understands your mission, when you have parents that understand what their kids are doing in school and what role they play, it all ultimately leads to more support for your schools and parents who can be better engaged in their child's education. So, when people say, what do? I relate it back to that's how I help students, by helping communities and support their schools and parents be involved in their children's education. So we have worked with the district for some time with some communications, but really they've focused more on external audiences, kind of like sharing the good news, things from the district level. We do a lot of media releases. We do your newsletters that come out 4 times a year, your budget communications, your social media, Facebook page is run through my department. We help with some district-wide communications if there's, something that needs to come out of the superintendent's office to all parents, a letter. We've unfortunately done some crisis communications late at night, on the weekends, whenever, and graphic design. So that's really kind of just been the model that the district has chosen to use our services for in the past, but we can do a lot more than that. One of the components of our service is it's very flexible, so we'll come in, we'll meet with the school administration, we'll find out what their needs are, and we'll create a plan that meets their needs. So I looked through, it was wonderful that you guys did some research, right? Because that's the first stage of creating a communications plan is some research. You got to know where you are to know where you need to be. So I went through that, and I noted some observations, which I've added in here. Things that I think that could help the board, help the district move forward in some of the things. It seems from looking at the survey data that we need to really focus on some systems and processes for how communications, refining them, right? Because we want to meet that objective. Provide clear, accurate, timely, and transparent communications in order to meet, those goals that we talked about for the community to be involved and to participate, to support you, and parents to be engaged in their children's education.
I'm not seeing any recommendations. On the observation.
Yep. So refine the systems to meet that objective. So things like ensuring that we have consistency district-wide, ensuring accuracy and clarity of content, deploying messages through multiple channels, right? We know with different types of messages, they could be received just an email or a text, but if you're really trying to change someone's thinking, they need to hear things over and over and over and over. We like to say that by the time that we just don't think we can say it another time without gagging is the time that some people are hearing it for the very first time. So over and over and over and over. So finding those different multiple channels. And I know the district has some great messaging software throughout the county, all of our schools do, but sometimes there's some nuances to that software and really understanding what they are so that you're making sure your messages are reached out. So that's an area of systems that, to focus on, to develop out, to help correct some of the things that we saw in your research that you did. We also heard a lot about the website in that research. Again, it's a big job taking care of a website. You need somebody who's going to coordinate it, right? When you have too many different places kind of putting it together, there's no one, finger on the pulse of things to take care of it. So some website coordination. Definitely can look at updating some of the organization so you provide a better user experience, making sure looking at the insights from the back end. What pages are people going to the most? Those should be the easiest pages for somebody to find when they go to visit your website. So, helping provide somebody to do that, because the district really doesn't have anybody designated to do that, is my understanding. It's kind of like some people do this and some people do that and some people do this, but having that kind of overall look over at it. The website has a really powerful calendar management tool built within it, and that's something that I saw in your research too, folks saying that they didn't know when things were happening. So got back to systems, having systems to make sure all of this information flows so that it can go into these tools and be pushed out the way that we need it to be. And of course, paying attention to the content on the website and making sure that it's accessible to, all individuals, whether they have, hearing disability or sight disability, different things like that. The other kind of thread that I saw looking through had to do with individuals maybe not feeling that their voice is heard in terms of they make a call or they send an email and the expectations for a response, their expectations for a response aren't met. So some customer service focus would be a really good area to focus on the short term. Defining the minimum expectations for all of your staff, and including the board. If you guys are getting emails, what are the minimum expectations for responding to people? Is it 24 hours? So setting those norms, talking about them, making sure everybody understands why they're important and their role in what happens when those expectations aren't met. So to make sure that happens, you really have to train your staff, right? You can't just expect them to all of a sudden do all of this stuff. You need to make sure that they understand the why and the how. And of course, at some point, establish some accountability for it. It needs to be customer service, whether it's worked into job descriptions, whether, your principals and your building administrators focus on it. So that would be an area that would provide some good immediate addressing of that. And then, although not reflected in the research, but something that we've been working on for some time, is just thinking about your branding, right? We have a logo that we developed, was it 2 years ago? 2.5 years ago? That had kind of never really launched, but we've been really excited to see people ask for it and know that it's being utilized in some different places. So that's something we should really think about because it's absolutely beautiful, and it kind of gives that opportunity for kind of like a reboot. So those are kind of the things from your survey, which I don't know, it was a couple hundred people took that service. Were they primarily parents? People through. So we have other audiences, though, that we really need to make sure that we're, addressing through our communications as well. Your staff, your general community, and so really to look at developing a long-term comprehensive communication plan, you want to do some heavy-duty research. And that would be, to administer a comprehensive survey to parents, to staff, and community at large. Conduct some focus groups if needed once you get those survey results back, if you need to delve into any of the areas, if there's some things were surprising, you didn't understand them. Creating some key communicator opportunities within your own, different environments with stakeholders, because the best place for us to find out what people are thinking or feeling is if we have people who we trust that are kind of tapped in and can tell us, right? So that's really valuable, setting those things up. Now, we've done a lot of communication research and planning. We partner with a product through Scope, which is through the National School Public Relations Association. It's a very strategically built, designed survey that is specifically for school districts, that measures, a variety of different points of communication, and they base all their outcome on, the best rubrics of practice for good communications. And I did include on the back of one of those handouts, a little overview about Scope, and I have something I'll leave with Victoria that kind of shows like just a sample of what the outcomes of that looks like in case it's something that you guys are interested in, want to look at more. I can also email that. So once you've done that research, my next suggestion would be at that point, you really sit and you develop a formal plan. Because for us to talk about, we can sit and we can throw things at the wall all day long to see what sticks, but you want your plan to be based upon your research so you know what's really needed. And that, of course, is kind of where we can push in and help do that type of work as well. And another suggestion that I had was just really for, if the board is passionate about this, clearly, if they asked for somebody to come and talk about it, really should have a district-wide communications plan. I'm sorry, a district-wide communication policy. And those are, School District A, School District B. There are two that I've seen over the years that I like just as samples, just for you to kind of think about what it might look like, for the board. Because, of course, the board's role is to set the policy, and then the administrator's role is to deploy the policy, right? So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what my life and my services at Ulster Boces. I'm also going to leave with Victoria just a sample of some different publications that we've done. I just randomly grabbed a few just so you get a little bit of an idea of, like, we're really, really diverse in what we do. We do everything from digital to print. We do things like handbooks for the Dignity for All Students Act, to course guides, to internal newsletters, to the newsletters. Really, really very versatile in the types of services that we can provide.
Hi, thank you for coming, first of all.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Currently, how much are we using your services? How much is it costing? And are we doing quarter, half-time? And could you talk to us about the lead specialist who is responsible for Ontiora?
Right. So your lead specialist right now is Valerie Havis. She has been in the district for many, many years. I can't venture to guess how many. She's on site 2 to 3 days a week, depending upon the needs. And she's very flexible, right? So if there's events that are happening on Tuesday and Thursday, one week, but Monday and Wednesday another week. So, she builds her schedule. We all build our schedules around making sure that we're meeting the needs of the district. But she's then supported by the team back at the office, right? So that's how we have that lead specialist who is your person that this is what we need to work on, and then they are, the liaison with the graphic designer or with somebody working on the website, different things. So she kind of pulls it all together. In terms of the cost right now, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What is her background?
She is a community relations specialist, is her title, and she has a journalism background. Yeah. So she's a very, very good writer and a very good photographer. I mean, almost everything you see on your social media page was something that she generated. But when there's some graphic design that goes out, she meets with the district and determines the needs, helps them identify what it needs to be, puts the content together, then works back with the graphic team. So your newsletters are actually a product of about 3 different people on the team, right? So she's writing it. We have somebody else who's, copy editing, making sure we have good sets of eyes on things. Then we have the graphic designer who's working on the piece. So, and that's one of the real advantages to having like a service like this, because you don't have, we really are able to hire people with different skill levels and push them in where they're needed. So it's very targeted to the district's needs, and it allows us, we also get this big countywide view of everything because we're working in all of the schools. Like right now, we're working on a communication about a benefit that's going to be available for folks for applying for the free and reduced lunch, right? Because this year, it's a big shakeup. People have been getting it for free. We need those applications turned in. So instead of every one of our school districts doing that communication all by themselves, we're doing it once, and then we're customizing it where it needs to be for each of the school districts. So there's, that efficiency of scale in terms of the work, but also in knowledge. Instead of having to have a whole bunch of people learn about it, our team learns about it and then pushes it out that way. Is that?
And the cost?
So I'm not sure if I actually know what that is this year. Probably $80,000. Does that sound right, Victoria? ish.
You know what? I think to be specific, we could ask Monica Leclerc to.
I could get that in my office. I just didn't prepare for
But
to bring
but to bring in the aid, bring the aid for the next year. That's for essentially 2 to 3 days a week.
That's well,
but it doesn't really count.
That's for
all
Valerie,
of the people.
2 to 3 days a week, and then an additional, and we call it units, right? So not necessarily days a week, but units, 4 units of service. But you could think of 4 units of service as like about, 70 or 80% of someone's time. And what works into there, some communications are at a higher level. So we have tier 1 and tier 2. I'm a tier 2. Other people are tier 1. So that's why it's very customized. We build the plan by speaking with the school district about their needs and kind of identifying what's needed, who's needed, and how we put it together that way.
Thank you very much. This is really exciting. Just a question, though, in terms of, and building off of my colleagues' questions on cost, would you then say your recommendations would be probably more money or about the same to implement these recommendations?
We'd have to meet, we'd have to meet with the administration to decide, are we going to continue doing everything that we're doing now? Is there a different focus? What kind of capacity do you have internally for things? What do you need for us? So, if you're going to go through a scope survey and everything else, we'd have to look at adjusting the budget to do that process, because putting a plan together is a lot of time, a lot of hours. But implementing that plan, right? Once you have it, we don't know what that plan looks like yet, what's on it, who would do it. But that's something that we're absolutely thrilled to sit down and to kind of hash out and identify those areas.
And then just one follow-up. Is your team adversed in understanding the security limitations of different platforms? You talked a bit about systems, which is why I'm asking these questions. But have you already done that work to better understand what apps would fly in terms of our standards around security? Well,
the great thing, again, about through the Boces is we do that. We have, through our instructional services, they have a clearinghouse. So when we want to go with apps and different things like that, they make sure that the privacy standards are met and all of those types of things. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, although Valerie has been serving Ontario for many years, she does have an impending retirement coming, and so there will be someone hired in her stead, and we're really hoping that they will be as expert as Valerie.
And that's, the opportunity right now is if you want to shift focus, because Valerie, she's an exceptional journalist. If some of the work that we're looking at is off onto a different thread, your lead specialist might have different skills, right? That's how I build my team, to match the best skills with the best district, so that they're a good partnership. And then they have the support of my entire team back at the home base.
Trustee Story.
This is more of a different question opposed to just Ontario students. You said you use a lot of graphic arts and stuff like that in it. Do you guys use any of the career and tech students that are doing that stuff to help you with this?
We have on a very small scale, but in general, if a district is coming to us for, graphic arts, they need it quick. They need it, high level, and it doesn't always work. But we've done partnerships with our Career and Technical Center students. The lawn signs that you see at graduation time, we have students design them. They design the program cover for different things within their environment.
That's great that you're able to use the students' works and stuff like that for it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions? Trustee Raimondo, Trustee Taylor, Trustee Bishop. Just one second. Trustee Bishop. Yeah. Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Sorry, one more follow-up. It was just you said at the end there about the timeline potentially. I know it's hard to know because we haven't put a plan together. But what does that typically take? You said the plan takes longer to create than the implementation. Just wondering, ballpark, would it take us a month, or are you saying a year?
Oh, to implement
to create the plan.
It would take many months because we would launch the survey, right? So there'd be some upfront work on that, launching, publicizing it, having it open, doing continual outreach to the different stakeholder groups to make sure that we get a significant level of participation to really feel that the results are valid and a representation of, you know, your community at whole, and then going through and analyzing those results, putting the reports together, and then, you know, sitting down, and that's where you really roll the sleeves up, and that's where the real work comes in, because you want to identify the different themes and the areas that are, you know, really targeted, prioritize them, what's going to be year one, what's going to be year two, what's going to be year three, and that work is done, again, in close work with your school administration. So many months. For the long term. That's why I give that long term, you know.
And the study that we did, would that not be a jumping off point compared to instead of scope?
So that is a great jumping off point, which is what I used to put those immediate, like things that we should do immediate. But scope is going to go deeper. It's going to go deeper, but it's also going to hit your other audiences, especially your internal audience. I mean, when you think about your staff and how much contact that they have with your different stakeholder groups, through scope and through looking at things, one of the questions they ask is how many people different people in different positions interact with. And a staff of 355 people has the potential to have a point of contact with over 4,000 of your stakeholders each week. So if your staff aren't good communicators at their own right, whether it's that they have the information to be able to share the correct, timely, accurate, relevant, concise, transparent, trustworthy information, every one of those interactions could have this ripple effect of hurting your communication success. So, it's very important that you include staff. It's also your general community as a whole.
And just to add too, I mean, the strategic plan is one thing. If there are services that the board feels and Antiora is on board with moving forward with, I'm not talking about the longer term robust plan. There's some immediate needs that you want to see support with. Those aren't things that we have to wait for 8 months. So right. Again, that's like all of our services. There may be a need that emerges instructionally. Stephanie's reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, we've got this new need. Can you come up and we'd love to do 3 hours at a superintendent's conference day." We're going to work to put that together. The strategic plan for this robust communication plan is, I think, the longer work. But certainly we can respond to any immediate needs that you think.
Yeah.
You need.
In our office, that's where we go. Pivot. Remember the Friends episode? Pivot, because that's what you do. I mean, even within any of our district work, these things happen all the time, and we just have to be ready to respond. So.
Well, first of all, Holly and I have been friends for over 35 years, for quite a while, and I just really want to thank you for making the schlep out here. I know that you live quite far away from here.
My pleasure.
I truly appreciate the amount of work that you put into this. I have a question. I'm curious if you would suggest that our starting point would be the board policy. Where would you suggest that we start, given that we've completed the survey? We did not have the buy-in that we had hoped for. We rarely do. So given that, but we did learn a lot of important information, obviously. So given that, what would be your suggestion of a first step?
My first step suggestions would be to look at systems, website, things that are going to have this immediate turnaround for folks, right? So if we can get in and start working on the website, getting things populated there, when people go to find something, they're going to go, "Oh, look, they listened." Right? They're doing what we asked, right? So to get some balls rolling, because these things we know are going to come out in the survey, because they already did, because you guys already did a survey. So we know those things are already in place. And while that's happening and you're doing the bit greater research, because we don't want the board to like jump into what they want their communication policy to be, right? So that's why I moved that down. But you do want to memorialize the work and the effort and the commitment through having a policy, so that it becomes part of, you know, who you are, who the culture is here.
I just want to add one piece on that, just in terms of the sequencing of the policy. I think it's critical, like all policies, that a policy is a statement of values, and I think because we're looking at our own communication, and so if we lead with a policy about there's an assumption of values about what communication should or could be for a particular district, rather than engagement with stakeholders to really have those value dispositions surface, and then ensure that policy is a mirror of those, so that people are excited about that, about living that out on a daily basis. And again, we can go through and name those. It's the DEI policy before engaging and with stakeholders. So again, kind of what I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer about sequence, but I do think Holly's approach to the plan that really is going to speak what is this communication belief for Onteora, and then have a policy that really echoes that and amplifies that people can get behind is the approach that the other districts have taken.
Because then your policy is built on the voice that you heard through the research, right? So that's a good place to start it.
Well, thank you both. Does anyone else have questions for Ms. Brooker? Valerie?
One real quick question. I'm assuming if we go with the scope evaluation, that's Boces aidable?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you know, in kind of thinking about this as a whole, one of the things that I would really like is for Boces to come back and talk to particularly the new board members, but all of us, about exactly how this works, because I think that a lot of community members don't fully understand the relationship between Boces and a district. I don't know that they fully understand what we pay for and what services we receive in exchange for the money that we pay. And also, I think I would love for the new board members to have a better understanding of PTEC and also the VOTEC programs, because I think that's a really important part of the work that we do here at Onteora. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that not all of our students are bound for college or should be bound for college. And Onteora, I think, does an excellent job of preparing students to go out into the world, and Boces is a big part of that. I'd love to have you guys come back, or Mr. Schenker come back, and talk to us about what we're paying for and what the relationship really is, because, you know, it's only in the last couple of years that I've fully understood, you know, or partially understood what that relationship really is, and why it's important.
Absolutely, be happy to, and we'll work that out with you all for, you know, timing and, you know, the details for what you want, and we'll bring some of our other folks to do kind of mini slices so you can get the overview for sure. Be happy to.
Dr. Corey has always come. He hasn't the last couple of years because of COVID, but he's always come and done his budget presentation. Dr. Schenker's been here in the past with him doing that, and they discuss exactly what you're asking, the different.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of seeing Dr. Corey make those presentations, but I don't think that most of the board members have at this point.
Right.
So whether it's Dr. Corey or yourself or a member of your team,
sure.
Right. I think it's just really important for everyone to fully understand exactly what that relationship is, and what our budget is.
We have the budget end, which is kind of the gloss over of how you're allocating funding. That isn't the program slice overview, which we've done for a number of boards, which is really about the services, not necessarily the finances behind them. We come out and do the budget piece for sure. That's important, but we do have a different version which really covers all of the services. So a little bit about what's instructional services, what's the RIC, you know, what's PTEC and CTE and our K-12 special ed. So we have that road show. We'd be happy to bring it here to Onteora for sure.
Go ahead, Valerie.
And also, when they do that, then we should, after that do our tours. Again, we haven't been able to do it, but that is something that the board members have, it's very enjoyable, and it's enlightening of the different programs that we have and our students go to. So you guys come, give us the overview, and then we go to you guys to vote, or not to vote, to visit and see the actual nuts and bolts of the actual real work with our students.
We love visitors. That's our favorite part, so for sure.
I've been at Boces for almost 27 years, and one of the things that hit with me very deep when we first started talking about me understanding services is that, Jonah talked about the state aid, but we don't want the schools just to see, okay, we get aid, we want to go there. We want you to come because we're the best at what we do. Like, this is, all of our services strive to be the best that they can for their different areas, and that's what keeps you there once you come.
Thank you both. Does anybody else have questions for Dr. Schenker or for Ms. Brooker? No? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated.
Enjoy the rest of the long summer. That's what we keep telling ourselves.
Okay, discussion and possible action. Item 7.01, approve the statement of the chair. The Board of Education hereby approves the statement of the chair for the 2022 budget vote and election. May I have a first, please? Trustee Story, second. Trustee Bishop. Comments, questions? All in favor? Ms. Taylor is going to abstain from a number of these votes because she wasn't given access to board docs prior to tonight. So if you can just record that correctly. Thank you, Amanda. 7.02, Memorandum of Agreement for a .4 TASA. The Board of Education hereby approves the MOA number 0816200022 for the .4 teacher on special assignment. May I have a first, please? Trustee Story, second. Trustee Bishop. Comments, questions? I have a question about this. I would love for us to potentially get a presentation from Mr. Harkin, and also a better understanding of how we're going to measure success on this. So if those two things would be, I think this is a phenomenal program, and I'd just love to understand more about what he's doing. I know that there was a presentation last year, but because we have so many new board members, I just think it would be awesome if we could do that. Anybody else? All in favor? Thank you. Item 7.03, Memorandum of Agreement for the Director of Transportation. The Board of Education hereby approves the MOA for the Director of Transportation. May I have a first, please? Trustee Lynch, second. Trustee Bishop. Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Item 7.04, approve the contract for the Interim Director of PE, Health and Athletics. The Board of Education hereby approves the contract for Jennifer Simmons. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Raimondo. Questions or comments? Trustee Wallace?
Yeah, I think this contract is troubling and overly generous. And I would recommend highly that it be as short as possible and that we quickly find our permanent person to do this job.
Trustee McLaren, anything? Superintendent McLaren, no. Okay. I think that the board recognizes I'll speak for myself. I think that I recognize the absolute need to have an athletic director. We hired someone last year who was unable to stay, and we're in a difficult position. So I'm grateful that Superintendent McLaren was able to find someone. I think that the salary, while high, is in line with what per diem is happening around our area. And I'm very glad that our students are going to be able to start their athletics next week on time. Did you want to say something?
Actually, I will add to that. Just in keeping with Trustee Wallace's desire to have it be a short term, this candidate, Ms. Simmons, is incredibly experienced and really going to be a valuable member of our team. She does not want to work here long term. She is retired and she would like to be retired, but she is very enthusiastic about helping us to find someone for this position. I know she is reaching out to contacts that she has around the state to try and identify some people who might be interested in applying here who maybe hadn't seen the job posting. She also recommended that we go beyond posting on OLAS, which is our typical, and actually advertise in another area that she has found is more fruitful for this position. So we're going ahead and doing that. And then she also offered to, depending on who we hire permanently, she has offered to be available to us as a mentor for that person. So hopefully the next person will stay longer than Mr. Nacarado was able to. And, you know, we're sad to see him go, but we really do want some longevity.
And I would just add to that that the background that Ms. Simmons has in adaptive physical education, I think will be incredibly beneficial to our district given the number of students that we have with IEPs. And I am very interested in her ability to mentor someone coming on if they don't have similar background. I just think that that's something that this district could really use. So I look forward to her being able to share that knowledge. Okay. Go ahead, Valerie.
I know, actually, that just this morning I was talking to another board member from another school district, and between the two of us, we figured there was at least 5 athletic directors that schools need around the area right now. So this is something that is well needed. It's not just us. It's right now it's the employers market. It's employees market, not the employers. There's more spots open than.
And I would just remind everyone that there was one candidate that was brought forward who was not willing to work at the salary that we are able to offer. So a tremendous amount of work has been put into finding a new athletic director. So this is not a Band-Aid that happened lightly. So while we understand, I think the board understands that we're taking on we're in a financial place that we don't necessarily want to be in. It's incredibly important for the kids to be able to start next week and to have everything and the support that they need and that the administrators need in order to move them forward in their sections. So given that, may we take a vote, please? All in favor? 4? Sarah? 5? 5 yes, and no, David? No. And 1 no. You've got 5 yes and 1 no. Thank you, Amanda. Okay. And the superintendent will report district news.
Good evening. So we have completed our search for a middle school principal to succeed Ms. O'Connor. And we have Jamie Didana on our agenda for appointment tonight. We want to welcome Mr. Didana to Onteora. He comes to us with years of instructional and administrative experience, and we are really excited that he has decided to join our team. He is here in attendance this evening for anyone who would like to meet with him, possibly during the break. And I'm sure that Holly will be creating introductory materials so that our community can become aware of Mr. Didana and begin to get the introduction process going. He has very, very big shoes to fill, but I'm sure that he's up to the task. As you all know, since we just voted on our interim director of PE, Health and Athletics, we are bidding goodbye to Ryan Nacarado. His last day with us will be on Friday, but we are very fortunate to have located an interim to step in and carry us forward. So Jennifer Simmons was responsible for the entire section of Section 1 program, comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and experience. As Trustee Sherry noted, we did hold an interview process, and we had one candidate who we were not able to bring to the board, but we have reposted the position. We are going to work through the process again. She has indicated that she will actively try and assist us in identifying potential candidates and that she will be available as a mentor. Mr. Nacarado and his assistant, Ms. Smith, have worked diligently with our fall coaches to ensure that our teams have all the supplies they need. And I know that our high school nurse, Mrs. Blakely, has been working with the student athletes to ensure that all the physicals are in order so that they can begin athletics on Monday. We're really excited for our fall sports season to begin. The beginning of fall sports is kind of like the soft opening of the school. The school buildings really do come alive when the kids return. I kind of find myself walking around smiling, just imagining that they're coming back. I think it's kind of known we have a leave of absence in our secondary music department. I thought just as one more method of trying to recruit somebody, I would include it in my superintendent's news. We have a leave coming up this fall. It's going to be for the first half of the year. We have posted this position 4 times and do not yet have a candidate to appoint. So if anyone here at the table, and I did get one recommendation, I reached out, I haven't heard back, but if anyone here at the table or at home knows of a retired teacher, a music teacher who might be interested, please have them reach out to us. We did put it back up on our website just as a continuous posting so that anybody who comes to look will know that we are still looking. So I was fortunate enough, as Dr. Schenker had noted when he greeted me, to attend the Ulster Boces Leadership Summit last week on Thursday and Friday. This is the annual superintendent's retreat for Ulster County, and we were fortunate to be joined by representatives from the State Education Department, and they spent a few hours with us going over some of the current issues, and I thought I would just share some so that everyone is aware that of the issues that they are pondering and trying to work on. They noted that they are critically aware of the teacher shortage that we've all been experiencing. They're working to address certification issues. They're starting with literacy, special education, and science, trying to remove some of the obstacles that candidates face in trying to become certified. They did acknowledge the certification system has become overly complex and specific for some of the certification areas. They're also looking into making the path from being a teaching assistant to a teacher easier for individuals to navigate. They did note that many of the teacher preparation programs are resistant to change because these programs are how the colleges make their money. And so for them, it's much more profitable to have a very long program that requires a lot from the candidates. But there have been reductions in enrollment recently, and so State Education Department believes that some of these programs will be more willing to consider changing. They also noted that their own teach certification system is outdated and needs to be reworked. They have received some funding to begin reviewing it, but it won't be overhauled anytime soon. They also noted that the accountability system that we have in place needs to be reviewed. There are federal requirements in place, but they acknowledge that some of the elements of the system currently are overly punitive and that it is unnecessarily complicated, and quite honestly, very few people truly understand it. They also, I found this a very welcome change, noted that they're trying to shift the tone, and you may notice that they have sort of changed how they're handling things like data releases. In the past, the releases were literally designed to point out whether a school was considered good or bad. And the leadership team now at State Ed is trying to shift that narrative from identifying a school in terms of good or bad to providing it as a list of schools that may be worthwhile in terms of making an investment in supporting that school. They also spent a little time talking about the Blue Ribbon Commission and the work that they're looking to undertake reviewing graduation requirements and Regents exams. They really appear to be genuinely interested in providing other ways for students to demonstrate competency and mastery that may not be available currently. They think they're going to be involved with this commission for at least 18 months. But they do not believe that Regents exams are going to go away in New York State, but they do feel that other measures may be introduced. And just as one other follow-up, we do have a secure spot at Olive Day, and our Director of Facilities assures me that we will have a table and chairs so that we can sit there. And I have asked my secretary to reach out to the 3 PTAs and the Booster Club to see if they wanted us to have membership forms and information on the table that we can hand out on their behalf while we're there.
That is very exciting news. I think that everyone's going to be really happy to see us at Olive Day, and that is open to any board members who would like to join Ms. McLaren and Ms. LeClaire at Olive Day. There is a frog jumping contest for sure. And I wasn't aware. You were not aware. Oh, yes. Yep, you should. And Mr. Mondo, I bet you've got some frogs in your neck of the world.
I believe this is becoming really appealing.
Yeah, no, this is Olive Day is a really huge thing, and I think having a table there is going to be fantastic. So I think it's going to be great, and I'm really glad that you figured that out. Thank you, Superintendent McLaren. Does the board have any news to report, district news? Any members of the board who would like to report district news? No? Sarah?
Thank you. I hope this is the appropriate place to just share, but I just wanted to both acknowledge and thank the district for sending me to the annual school law conference of the Mid-Hudson School Study Council. I was really, really excited to be a part of it. I learned so much. And I was also really the benefactor of just having the superintendent sit with me, so I could also just learn about how different policies and laws have already been applicable to our district, and then things we need to be thinking about as we move forward. Everything from tenure to athletes. Contracts, potential high school athlete contracts, to of course all the policies related to COVID and the health department. So I just wanted to say thank you. I learned a lot, and I look forward to my continued learning as a board member to serve the district.
And later. Yep. Excellent. And I think, Megan, you went as well, right? Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to do that. I think that any opportunity that a board member has to participate in a conference, if you can take it, because the amount of learning that happens there is exponential for sure. Does anyone else have district news? No? Okay. The board will acknowledge the public be heard comments from last meeting. Item 10, we did not have any public be heard comments from the last meeting. We're going to check and see if we have any for today. And public and students may comment on any agenda or non-agenda item. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes during public be heard. Civility is always expected. Speakers at public be heard understand that the Board of Education cannot engage in discussion nor answer questions during public be heard. The Board of Education and Superintendent cannot be party to discussions of individual student or personnel matters in open session. People wishing to express individual student or personnel concerns can bring them to the Superintendent's attention another time. We do not have anyone for public be heard, and we did not receive any letters this week to be read. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? No? In that case, the board's going to take a break for 5 minutes. Okay, item 13, approve the consent agenda. The board hereby approves item numbers 13.02 through 13.08. May I have a first, please? Trustee Story, second. Trustee Wallace. Any comments? Trustee Story?
I reviewed Schedule U and everything's in order.
Thank you. First, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Welcome to Mr. Dodonna. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to having you in September. Bye, Ms. Frandino. Yes. Item 14, committee reports. Before we start this, I just wanted to let the board know that both Trustee Wallace and myself will not be joining the Facilities Committee. We feel pretty strongly that Trustee Story has this under control, and that our efforts can go elsewhere, because we don't actually think that Trustee Story needs us in the room to continue the great work that she's been doing. So that being said, item 14.01, the Audit Committee. Who would like to report from the Audit Committee? Trustee Bishop?
So the Audit Committee has not met yet. We are waiting for the external audit to be ready for our review. I did speak with Deb DeBrill, and she's the person in Central who schedules all those meetings for us. We will meet 4 times a year, as usual. And as soon as we have a response back from our external auditor, we'll schedule our first meeting.
Excellent, thank you. And Facilities Committee?
We have not met yet, but however, we are meeting on Thursday afternoon. So.
Policy Committee? Trustee Raimondo?
The Policy Committee has yet to meet, but we are scheduled for our first meeting the second Monday of September.
Thank you. And the Communications Committee, who would like to report?
I can. Let's see. I just have some quick notes. Well, if I can find them. No. Here we go. Okay. So Trustee Lynch and Trustee Wallace and I met on July 22nd, and we really had an open discussion about a lot of issues and just ideas and concerns about communication between the board and the community. And I'll just read through a quick list. We considered the communications audit performed, or having a communications audit performed by an outside consultant, and that was knowing that we had already developed and distributed and received some data back from our own internal survey. We wanted to talk about considering hiring or contracting with a full-time or part-time communications person. We discussed rewriting or revising the public be heard speech that is read in board meetings so that it's a little bit more welcoming and just not so stark. We talked more about having a monthly superintendent/Board of Ed newsletter or some such communication that would be a collaborative effort between us. We talked about improving and making regular our social media presence, even if it's just an upbeat or a fun meme or something, just to really keep our face forward on social media. We considered an alternative to the current model that we're using for communicating with parents, which I think we heard Holly talk a little bit about tonight. There are many possibilities. We talked about the replacement of Valerie Havas, knowing that she was going to be retiring soon and how the district would be handling that. And we spoke about ways of making board meetings more welcoming and inviting the community in We talked about how board meetings used to have cookies and tea, and you know, the fact that we really can't do that anymore. But just trying to find a way to get more people to attend our meetings. What else? We wanted to better understand the level of student, staff, administration, and community media literacy. Let's see, we wanted to talk about and really make an effort to try to encourage a more diverse Board of Ed membership. And we were wondering about the welcome back and welcome to Onteora packets. So not just welcome back to school in September, but and I think we've talked about this as a communications committee in the past. What are we doing to try to welcome people who are moving into the district to come or to consider coming to Onteora, moving to the district because Onteora is such a great school? And that's it.
Excellent. Thank you guys for doing that work and putting the effort and time in. Committees can be hard to organize, and getting everybody on the same page and in the same place is difficult. And just to clarify for Trustee Taylor, who is new with us tonight, every board member is required to sit on at least one committee, and we will get you, Amanda will get you a list of where there are spots, and you can say where you might like to fit in. We are not allowed to have more than 3 members on any one committee. So if there's a committee that you're really interested in, let me know, and somebody may want to shift to give you space to do that. Okay, the Legislative Action Committee has not met yet, but we do have a meeting coming up next week. And if anyone has any ideas, right, is it next week? 2 weeks? September 13th? I don't know what day it is. In about a month? All right, we have time? Okay, good. Good. If anybody has ideas prior to that meeting of things that they would like us to talk about or focus on, certainly we have some ideas, but are open to hearing from the board as to where you might want us to put our energies. I did happen to have an impromptu meeting with Senator Hinchey a few weeks ago, and we had a great discussion about the district. She's incredibly supportive of Superintendent McLaren, working as hard as she is to expand access to broadband and cell phone coverage for the area. She absolutely pledged her support to the district in doing that work. And she was just very open to talking about housing security and food security in the Onteora district. So for sure, Senator Hinchey is a friend to the Onteora School Board and school district, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about how to work with her in her office moving forward. Anybody else have anything to add for committee reports? Okay, item 15, ICR is approve all contracts and independent contract retainers. The board hereby approves item numbers 15.02 through 15.13. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Raimondo, questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 16.01, cell phone assignments. The board hereby approves the following cell phone assignments listed below. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second. Trustee Story. Comments or questions?
Doesn't the new middle school principal need to be on this list?
He wasn't hired until tonight. So at our next meeting, we'll do cell phone assignments again, I would assume.
If it'll be up to him whether he would like to take a district cell phone, but yep, I have this feeling that we may be revisiting this list frequently this year.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if, I don't believe the interim athletic director wants one, but as we hire a replacement, that person may also want one. So it's going to be, unfortunately, an evolving list.
Okay.
All in favor? Terrific, thank you. And the board will discuss old business. Does anyone have old business to discuss? Trustee Raimondo.
In August 2nd's meeting in the consent agenda, I wanted to acknowledge, which I didn't before, 2 retirees, Leanne Vandebogart and Michelle Darling, and I wanted to thank them for their service to their community and to the children. And I apologize that I didn't do it 2 weeks ago. I'm learning.
It's a big job. You're doing great. Anyone else have old business to discuss? No? Okay. New business. Who's got new business? Trustee Lynch.
In the spirit of moving forward with the communications survey and the wonderful presentation that the Boces colleagues made and some of the work we want to do within the communications committee, could I ask why Boces wasn't utilized for the survey that we just did? It was before we were brought onto the board, so just curious if you could help us understand that.
Sure, yeah, I was on the communications committee last year, so I think I can explain it. And I think that this is a really important question because I'm not sure that all the board members or all of the community members understand that we pay for Boces services. So the presentation that Boces gave tonight was excellent, and we are currently paying them for the services that Valerie Havas provides to us through Boces. Any of these other steps that we would undertake would also be an expense to the district. So the decision was made to do our own survey so that there wouldn't really be a cost to the district to kind of get a baseline of where we're at. And then for the board and working with the administration to decide if there was a need to take it further. So the next step could be something like using Boces or another program like that, which we would need to pay for in order to implement the survey. So the decision was initially made to make sure that we were doing everything that we could do without taxpayer cost. And then something like Ms. Brooker described tonight would be a cost to the district. So we would need to make a decision as to whether or not there was a cost benefit. Does that answer, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess it was unclear to us, what in this presentation, so it would be great to get more detail when it's when we have our next committee meeting from the superintendent potentially, but just about what costs we are already covering with our current work, and then what would be additional. I think that would be helpful, and I understand it's nuanced based on what we want and what we need. I heard her say that, but it would just be helpful to get that analysis. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that Boces does terrific work in the places that they do terrific work, and I thought that the presentation offered some things that could be really helpful for us as we're moving forward and trying to better understand the best communication practices for the district and how we can really improve the board's communication with the district, because that's really what we are tasked with, is our own communication with the community. Does anybody else have any new business? I just have a quick question that is not an RFI, but is just a question. Last year, our students were utilizing, and this came up for me when Ms. O'Connor was presenting, the after-school study lab. And last year, it was not fully staffed. So kids had an opportunity to go to study lab, and I know Ms. Superintendent McLaren, you were not here last year, so you wouldn't be aware of this, but there was an after-school study lab, and there were times when it was fully staffed, and then there were times when it was not staffed, and then there were times when students would be in there and the teacher would say, I need to leave, and students would be dismissed from study lab prior to the buses coming or the end of the day. And I know this because I had to pick my child up pretty frequently from study lab before the time that I thought that he would be through, and that was because the teachers were only staffing for part of the time. So I wondered if at the next meeting, if you could kind of give us an update on what study lab was going to look like this year, and if we would have staffing, and also just as a statement, I think it would be great if someone commits to doing that they could stay the whole time until the bus comes, because kids wandering the hallway is not great.
Yeah, I know all kinds of complications came up with COVID, and I wasn't here. My experience in previous years, pre-pandemic, was that we had rotating teachers signed up for homework help after school, and it was always appropriately staffed, held for the right length of time, and our staff, our faculty and staff, was always very willing and supportive. So I can ask the principals what kind of homework help schedule they have planned. I don't know if they'll have everything set up yet, but we will get what information is available and share it out.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the things that came up last year was that when kids would miss a test in school and then they would need to stay after to retake the test in homework help, that if the lab was closed and they had made arrangements to stay after, it could be problematic, and they weren't always sure when it would be open or when it wasn't. And I know that you were not here last year, so I'd love any information you can get. Trustee Wallace?
So I've been thinking a lot about how, food insecurity is potentially going to be exacerbated by the loss of the free lunches across the board that's happening with the federal government, even though there's a fair number of people who might qualify for subsidized. And I wondered if I have heard that in some places they're now doing fridges where kids can access yogurts or bananas or fruit, and it's just sort of a place that a hungry kid, of course, doesn't learn as well as a kid who's sated, and I wondered if that might be something that would be an easily implementable way to lower the amount of hungry kids who may be facing that issue this year. Sort of community fridge, right?
If David's referring to what I've been kind of seeing lately, it's an area for kids to kind of put back things that they do not use. So if you get an orange with your lunch and you don't eat oranges, you put it in the table, and then anybody can come and grab it. If you have an extra milk and you don't want it, you can put it on the table. I think that may be what you're referring to, because I know it's happening a lot outside of New York State. I don't know I am familiar with the health regulations. I'm not entirely sure that that's allowable in New York State, because once a child touches something, right, I don't believe that they can share it with another child.
I had heard that, of course, the nurses have snacks on them sometimes if a kid's hungry or feeling, like he needs some sustenance right away. I just wondered if there was a way to expand that given the change that we have this year.
I can certainly ask our Director of Food Services. But just to be clear, our K-6 buildings are still free and reduced. So it's just the secondary that is not.
I'm thinking the secondary.
Right. I can certainly ask our Food Services Director what we are able to do. Yeah. But as Trustee Sherry said, the Department of Health makes things very cumbersome and complicated, unfortunately.
Trustee Taylor?
Working in the school districts as a school nurse, sometimes the PTA, I know we don't have one in high school so much, but the PTA would give money to the school nurse to buy snacks to have on hand that can go out to the students that don't have a snack at the time. And then with the extra things at school, if they knew before that they didn't want the milk or the snack or whatever, before they actually gave it, they could tell the lunch people that, I don't need that, and then it never actually goes into their hands, so it can be moved to a separate area before the student actually touches it.
Yeah, that sounds like that could be a great solution.
But they actually have to buy it to get credit for the full, complete meal. Right. So yeah.
You're getting it, but it doesn't actually end up on your tray, and then it just gets diverted.
Okay. And you know what, honestly, our Food Services Director is so in tune with kids. She may have something like this already happening. I don't want to assume that she doesn't, because she's pretty incredible. But I'll ask her what we have happening, and then if there's anything additional that we can do.
And I would also, please correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent McLaren, but I believe that we also have an arrangement where if a child does not have money on their lunch account, they are still allowed to take a lunch. They can't get extras, but they can take a lunch.
Absolutely,
And
they have a meal available to them, definitely.
I think that that's just something that we need to make more known, whether it's through signage in the cafeteria or just kind of a conversation. But I do think that's a really important thing that Ontario does, and that there's not food shaming or food security shaming that's happening here. And, you know, anything that we can do this year to support food services, because this change is, I think, really difficult and comes at a really difficult time. And it is a federal government change. It is not an Ontario change. But the federal government has decided to stop paying for meals for school districts, and it's going to be really difficult for a lot of families in our district. So anything that we can do to support children in food security, I think, is important.
And to focus on anonymity. So, you know, still, unfortunately, some people feel shame and for when they're hungry, and if there's anything we can do to make it, and not, you know, so it's just there's the fridge there, you know, that they can easily access without even thinking, and it becomes almost second nature. With the psychologically, I think it would be a welcome move.
Trustee Taylor?
I would just want to add that if we do have something where we get extra funds, either volunteer or whatever, for the snacks, not to have it in the nurse's office, just because I've been in that position, and the nurse's office is already overwhelmed with kids coming in, and then if there is people sick, you don't want to add healthy people to the mix that could get sick. So even if the nurse has a hand in arranging it, maybe it's at a separate location.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to David's point as well, is that, you know, adding layers of shame into this is what we really want to avoid. So, you know, children would know other children go to the nurse's office to get food, and that's just not acceptable anymore. So whatever we need to do to make it easy and accessible and, you know, anonymous if possible, or whatever we need to do to kind of support kids and not being hungry while they're here, I think is the goal. Anybody else? Okay. The next meeting is September 13th, 2022. Oh, wait, RFIs. Does anybody have a request of information of the superintendent? And to be clear, the difference between asking questions in an RFI is that this is an opportunity to do an official request for information of the superintendent. They can also be done in writing by board members who can email them, copying the rest of the board on requests for information, and then the superintendent replies with specific information depending on the question. Are there any RFIs? Trustee Story?
Superintendent McLaren, I sent one last week. There's two of them. It was in one email. It was when you were in the conference, so I said it didn't need to be. But the one question was about the substitutes. When we appoint them, how long are they here for? Do we have to appoint them annually, or are they just here indefinitely, or how does that work?
We appoint them with an effective date, and they remain substitutes until they choose not to be, or until there's been, if there are any particular issues, and then they are removed from the sub-list after a discussion with an administrator.
Would the board ever be told when a substitute has been removed from the list?
I don't know that has been our practice. Our district clerk has.
When they put in a resignation or resign or they're terminated, it is on our personnel agenda. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other request I did forward to Assistant Superintendent Leclerc.
Well, like I said, that'll be a while, so
Yes.
that I understand.
Yep.
and anticipating and looking forward, or not looking forward to that.
Okay, our next meeting is, go.
Sorry.
Oh,
Everyone.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, another RFI for the superintendent. I was wondering if you could provide us, nothing urgent, but just a sense of the number of families that applied for UPK for this school year, and how many were awarded the the grants. There's a half-day grant and then there's a full-day grant, as I understand it. Just think it would be helpful for our ongoing legislative action work if our resolution gets any traction. It would be great to know our own numbers. Thank you so much.
Any other RFIs? No? Okay. Our next meeting is September 13th at Woodstock Elementary School at 6 p.m. Valerie, would you like to be the first? Trustee Story, who is second? Trustee Bishop. Comments about closing the meeting? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.